Hello, everybody. I've got an interview today with my mentor, I would say, Cosmos Ohms. Now, if you don't know Cosmos, you don't know about the punk movement. Cos, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, Sammy. How about yourself?
I can't complain. I just want to ask one question, and
Go
we'll
ahead.
go on to this interview. How about you and CBGBs?
Where do you want to start?
Let's start at wherever you want.
Okay, when I got to New York, I moved there from Hawaii and got there in 1972. And we had a theater company called Theater of Madness, which was kind of psychedelic rock theater, kind of along the lines of Alice Cooper, the Tubes, stuff like that, Fire Sign Theater. And we were looking for gigs. What we wanted to do originally is we wanted to do Broadway and do rock and roll Broadway, right? So we started looking around. We were brought there with some high standing people. We introduced a lot of people at the top of the industry. And we used to we collect cards about all the venues that were doing things. We
Mhm.
call them opportunes, Opportunes, opportunes. And one of the opportunes was this club called CBGBs. And this is 73, I think first started becoming aware of it. And that's when Hilly opened CB's on the Bowery. He had Hilly's on 19th Street originally. So anyway, I wasn't doing business for the band at that point. Cap, who was our drummer, was the business agent, right? And we go to these different clubs, and all the people that said you want to do Broadway, you got to start somewhere. So the best way to do that is to start in the underground, find a club that'll support you in some way, and start building yourself a following and building yourself some kind of an identity that people know who your name is. So when they put it on that big uh, front of the theater, they'll know who the hell you are, not the us from, you know. So anyway, we started doing that. And, at that point, we did not connect with CBGBs. We did connect with a guy named Paul Sub, who had the scene that preceded CBGBs, which was out at the Coventry. And we became one of the house acts there. Uh, Kiss came out of there, and the Dictators came out of there. And an all-female band called Isis came out of there. Margot, who ended up, still has TC Talent Connection up in New York. Anyway, about 74, an old friend of mine who I bailed out of jail in Hawaii calls me up, Rocky Teplitz, and says, Kaz, he says, I'm working with ABC Paramount now. That's who the Ramones were on first, was ABC. That was before Sire. And he says, you bailed me out of jail and you probably saved my life. He said, I was in jail with all these huge Hawaiians. A Jew boy in jail with a lot of Hawaiians ends up pretty dead. So he said, you saved my life. He says, I'm working with ABC. I want to give you guys a record contract. Come up and meet me.
Oh,
I
wow.
go up there and, guy's great. Have handed me a contract, said, take it back to the band, see what you think. All right. Took it back to the band. And at that time, Cap, who was our drummer, was getting ready. He was thinking of leaving the band. His parents were getting out of business, and they were going to give him their school up in Massachusetts, Boston area. And then at that time, I brought the contract back. We've been fighting for 7 years to get a contract, finally get a contract, and Cap says, I'm leaving the band.
Oh,
So
my
the
God.
whole thing kind of broke up. All right. For 8 months, I walked around there just completely depressed. Didn't know I came from Hawaii. Everything I had sold except 10 records and my
It was like
guitar.
your dream, and all of a sudden the bottom was.
Oh, just popped out of it. So I'm walking around there, depressed and everything, and I'm going around there. And about 8 months later, I say to Dosa, Dosa was my partner then, still is. And he says, I said to him, Dose, I said, I came too far and too long and put too much on the line to just walk away like a dog with my tail between my legs. I said, I'm going to go on in this thing. I said, if you wanna, we go on together. So at that point, Dosa said, "Yeah, I want to do that. I want to keep playing. I've been here. I came here to make it, New York." I said, "Okay." We both came to do the same thing. So we decided to put Star Tune together, and that grew out of the ashes of Theater of Madness. Now, Theater of Madness was a very involved theatrical production. All right, that was not the act to bring to CBGB's. CBGB's was rock and roll that was trimmed down to the bone. It took all the rock, all the hippie rock before it, cut out all the solos, all the drum solos, all the shenanigans, just into a straight band that plays good. And out of that, the bands that were starting to make it was the Ramones, Talking Heads, Television, the Shirts, Blondie, maybe 10 different bands, but those are the bands that'll always come up in. So we decided to make Star Tune. Dosa took all the theatrics, cut it out, and cut them down to 3-minute pop songs. He's a great writer, not a good writer, a great writer. And his writing, I don't know to tell you where it comes from, but it's beyond this, it's beyond the temporal. All right. Take my word for it, and it's true. But anyway, we decided that we were going to go out and play. So and I was going to do the business. We put a band together around it, and that's what happened. We started playing at CBGB's, and we played there as Star Tune. We had the first one, Dose and I and the other guys that were the original Star Tune played there. That lasted for about a year and a half. We kept knocking our heads against the wall, not going anywhere. Right. So we broke it down again, and we started with 3 new players, guitar, bass, and drums. Figured if I put a good rhythm section together, Dosa writes good music, he can front the band once they've got it together. So that's what we did. We brought the guys there, and went it over okay. It didn't set any fires. He wasn't ready to say, "Yeah, I'm going to quit my life and give you a contract." And so we had to stay with it. So it came to me that if we wanted to get the time of day from this guy, had to be on the inside. So I had to figure a way to get inside CBGB's.
Right.
So I used to go down there in the afternoon. In the day, my day job was I was a graphic artist at a place called Crystal Letterpress. Funny, Haley's last name was Crystal too. And I learned how to do professional graphics. And all the while, I wanted to start a record label. So I knew in order to start a record label, there's a lot of components I got to learn. One of the things was how to lay out artwork. So I learned that first I learned that at Geyer Press, and I learned how to do calligraphy from a master there. And, I was able to study there. And then later, I had this job with Crystal Letterpress, and Geyer used to send me out with stuff. So I'd have to learn. I'd learn all the places where all the good artists were, all the good press places were, all the good typesetting boards. And then when I was working at the advertising agency, when I wasn't busy or they didn't have me on the street, I would hang out with the art department and with the creatives, and I'd ask them a lot of questions. Hey, how come you design that this way? Why is it a lot of white space and it sucks you right to the middle of the image and there's your image? And they started to teach me about it, that it's all about using the white space to guide the eye into things. So I started to learn that, and I learned where all the good graphics people were. All right, and then my next job, which was at Geyer, not Geyer Studios, but Crystal Letterpress, I had to make up business cards, posters, pamphlets for people, folding things. So I learned all that stuff, and I learned how to do blue line stuff. Before computers, it was blue line. Right. You sat at an art table with an angled art table, a T-square, and a straight edge, and you drew your things. So I learned how to do that. So what would happen, because at that point, we were starting to play CBs. We were, I realized that was something new, and I had to get in there. So I ended up losing the job at the printing place. But then I started hanging out more at CB's because I was going down there after I worked, and hanging out. And one day I go down there, and the cook says to me, he says, "I need some help, like getting some of the things I need and prepping, chopping stuff up."
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'd go down there in the afternoon, and I'd help him prep, cutting onions, peppers, salad stuff,
A lot
cheese,
of tears, huh?
making yeah, making hamburgers. All right. Well, one day the guy didn't show up. Hilly sees me in the kitchen with an apron on. He says, "You know how to make onion soup? Can you make chili?" I said, "It's questionable, but I can learn. But I can make a good hamburger and I make a great omelet." All right. So he said, "Well, keep your smock on. You're the cook now." All right. So that lasted about 6 months. All right. Hilly's wife, who was really the financier behind CBGB's, she had a real job making real money so she could buy alcohol and meat and the things that it needed to keep the club open. Uh, her and I didn't get on eye to eye. And she had this habit of picking someone in the building and making them her pet peeve for a week or a month or so. Well, that went on for a while, and she kind of come back and ride me, and one day kind of flipped some circuit in my head, and I made her a beautiful omelet. She says, "This is terrible. I wouldn't feed this to my dog." And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "It's a touched pan on the bottom, but it's beautiful. It's a good tasty on." She said, "I wouldn't feed that to my dog." I said, "Well, I think what you should really do is probably leave the kitchen." And I grabbed the meat cleaver, slammed it down on the butcher block, and I said, "Now." And I chased her out of the club with the meat cleaver. I got fired. All right. And Hilly put me on detention for a week. She says, "Come back in a week. We'll find something else." At that point, I came back after, getting really going crazy and said, "Oh, look at, I just blew a great gig, blah, blah, blah." And I figured I've got lights hanging in here because we do a theater show. I'll offer Hilly my lights. He doesn't have lights in there. He had one, huh? No, there was just one neon light, and the only one that was smart enough to change it was David Byrne from Talking Heads. He'd go up there right before the show, pull the thing so it was dark, go up to the stage, put his hand up in the air, pull the thing, and say, "The name of this band is the Talking Heads, and the name of this song is Psycho Killer," and would go into it. And he was the only one smart enough to do that, right? And I figured, wow, there's my opening. This is what the guy needs. He's got, the sound was okay. It wasn't great yet. Uh, but anyway, I said, "Hilly, I'll tell you what, I've got lights in my place. You need lights." I said, "The people come here to hear the music and to see the music. Half the bands are there, they're not seeing. I can fix that for you." I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll bring my lights in for free for a week. If you like them and you like the way I work with the bands and you feel it's something that's going to help you, keep me on. If not, tell me to fuck off." Excuse me, censors out there. But these are rock and roll terminologies.
Right.
So I came in there, and like the first week, all the big headliners were there. Talking Heads, Ramones, Television, John Cale, Lou Reed, and there was a jam there that went from what time, when it closed at about 8, about 4 or 5 in the morning, and the bands kept playing until 9 in the morning. I stayed with them and worked with them, and it was Lou Reed and John Cale and all the great bands, and it was a natural. It worked together. Because I'd hung out there and I'm a musician, I knew the music, and I could follow their chord progressions and turn those into color.
Right. The timing.
The timing. Well, the timing is everything.
Yeah.
And if you want timing, what my laws are, you got to stay with the drummer. And if you want the stuff to pulse right, you got to be between the kick and the snare.
Who
Same
were
thing.
who were the easiest and the hardest to work with?
I'm not going to mention any of the hardest. The
Okay.
easy, but a lot. Blondie was great to work with. Talking Heads was great to work with. Ramones, I wasn't their LD, but their LD was Arturo Vega, and he and I were very good friends. So he'd come up, and he wanted to do it. I had a 6-channel console and two TTI 6-packs, 2.4K 6-packs. So I could only get 6 channels of light. So Arturo's lighting plot was all red, white, and blue. So when he wanted all white, I had to pull out all the other circuits and punch up all the white circuits. So he would run the console and I would do the patching, hot and live, the way it should be done. And it was like, we always had a ball doing it. And I love that band. Love the Ramones. They invented punk rock. I think, for my money, the first real punk rock group was the Dead Boys that played in America. And then, as the groups came, the first wave, everything was new. Everything was fantastic. All these people came there for the main reason that they could play their own music. There were 2 rules at CBGB's from the very get-go. Number 1, you have to play your own music. You have to play original music. Number 2, we don't road your gear. We don't hump your gear. You do your own humping. You want to play this place? We're going to give you a nice stage, nice light, great people to work with. And after that, it's up to you. If you knock him dead and people like you, he's going to ask you back. As you get better and you progress, you're going to progress financially. And at that point, you could get signed to labels that meant something. There were real record deals.
I'm sure a lot of the people were in there scouting these groups at that time.
Yeah, like Seymour Sign practically lived there. Clive Davis was there all the time. The people from Capitol who ended up signing the shirts were there all the time. Doreen D'Agostino. So I started to become friendly with these people. And the people from A&M. A&M Records was a very, very smart enterprise. And they tuned into the
Maybe explain to folks a little bit who A&M was. That's Albert and Mancini, right?
Was it Albert Mancini?
Wasn't that Herb Albert? Wasn't that the
Herb
collaboration?
Albert, yeah.
I remember having the albums.
Yeah.
When I was a kid. Yeah.
Anyway, I ended up becoming friendly with them, and I was at the Ritz or at the CB's for quite a while then. And the day I went up there, I was trying to get Star Tune signed, and I was on my 4th indie record, and there was people that liked it, and I developed a good play base, picking up mostly on college radio before everyone got hip to that. Mm-hmm. The secret with college radio, why it's easier to get airplay, is they don't pay royalties to ASCAP and BMI.
Oh.
All the mainstream, the charting stuff, they pay royalties. All right. So the reason that Hilly made the bands play all their own original music is because the hitters would come up, the ASCAP or BMI would come up. Mr. Crystal, you have people here playing our catalog items and you owe us an estimated blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Well, his wife, Karen, said, Hilly, you should make these bands play their own music. That way you won't have ASCAP and BMI fishing for you all the time. Wow. So that became rule number 1. And then the second rule was, I was part of the original crew there. Taxi was the first person there. And then I came in doing lighting. Norman Dunn was there as the church sound man and as just a major sound genius to help with everything. And then we became the original production team there. And what happened is people would be very comfortable. The acts, when they came in and they saw our faces, they said, we're okay. We've got the right guys here. These guys are going to look to make us good, sound good and look good.
Well, you'd made a name with all the artists.
We made a name with them, and we probably had the same power that 77 of the acts had. You know, when you know, it's funny when television first played there. Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, when the club was when we were doing Hilly's memorial after he had passed. Richard Lloyd is up there telling the story of how they got involved there, and he says, "Well, he says, you know, we're walking down on the Bowery, and we see this guy on a ladder, and he's hanging up stuff. He's hanging up letters, and he's putting up this new, you know, overhang. It's a CBGBs, right? And they stopped by there. They were television, and they were looking for gigs. So they said, are you opening a new club here?" And Hilly said, "Yes, we're opening a new club. It's going to be called CBGBs." And they said to him, "Well, what does that stand for?" "Well, it's actually CBGBs and Omphog, country, bluegrass, and blues, and other music for uplifting gormandizers," right? Because uplifting gormandizers, okay. And he says, so it's really what I'm looking for is country, bluegrass, and blues. Do you play country? Do you play bluegrass? Do you play blues? Now, they played really outside psychedelic jazz, punk jazz. So it was none of that. But he, you know, Richard was fast, and he said, well, he said, yeah, we use some of the notes that are in the blues scale in our songs. So I guess you could say we play blues, and some of the rhythms could possibly be interpreted as bluegrass kind of, and country. Yeah, some of the chords we play are country chords. So yeah, we play country, bluegrass, and blues. Okay, I'll give you a gig. He gives them their first gig, and they come down there and they play. And in the early part of television, they were chaotic. You know, it was all over the place. And Hilly goes to them at the end of the show, like he would to many of these acts, and he says, you know, you're really, really rough, really raw, and really terrible, but I see something there. He says, what I want you to do is I'm going to give you another gig, but you have to go back to your studios and rehearse. Like, give it 3-4 months, you know, and put yourself together so the things make sense. He gives them the gigs. All right, their manager happened to be a very, very smart guy by the name of Terry Ork. He was the founder of Ork Records. And actually, Little Johnny Jewel by television was the first independent punk release that started the scene.
Wow.
Well, Terry goes in there and he talks with Hilly, and he says, Hilly, he says, I manage television, as you know. He says, and I'd like to get them some more gigs here so we can really make them take off. He says, I got an idea for you. He says, what's your worst night of the week? Hilly says, well, Sunday. It's always the worst night of the week. Terry says to him, okay, what's the best you've done on your worst night? He gives him a dollar figure. So he says, I'll tell you what, I'll take that price and I'll put $10 on it. And I'll guarantee you, I will guarantee you out of my pocket that if the band doesn't make it, you're recompensed. All right. He says, but I need to get a weekend, and I need to get 4 weekends in a row. Hilly gives him the 4 weekends. It was, you know, there was nothing really going on yet at that time. So he's trying to build a following. Well, Hilly or television was friends, and Terry was friends with this other artist who was a poet in the Lower East Side. And he figured, guy just gave me weekends, says, I got to fill his bubble. So he calls up this girl who also had a band and says, you know, you've got a good band. They can all play pretty good. And she says, I know you're friendly with this guy. Said, would you consider doing 4 weekends with us at CBGB's? And the girl said yes. And it happened to be a girl by the name of Patti Smith.
Oh, wow.
All right. who was to get signed by Arista and was just, she was the original female punk. You know, she was it. She lived it. She, you know, got to work with them many, many, many times. Incredible band. So they did that. They did the 4 weekends, which ended up being 7 weekends. And that was like the thing that kicked off the CBGB scene.
Wow.
And then when the band started to find out that you, not that you could, but that you had to play unique music, your own music, at that point, this was 73, 4, 5, and music was coming alive again in New York. And it was right for a new scene. There was this other club up on between 17th and 18th in Park Avenue called Max's Kansas City. And the guy that was the promoter there was a fellow by the name of Peter Crowley.
Oh,
Okay. So this is where, you know, we live, you know, 6 degrees of separation. So anyway, I started going over there and talking them up, and finally got some gigs there for Star Tune. And I would help him in different acts and acts that he brought in. The Dolls were able to play at CB's. Who else? The Dead Boys were able to play both rooms, and Blondie was able to, because Blondie started as a cash register girl at Max's. She started band playing with a band called the Stilettos, a girl named Elda Stiletto. And she was a backup singer with Stilettos. And that was how she started. And I mean, I think she's making the most money of any of the American punk bands. You know I tried to book her in Egypt, and not where's Dubai.
mm-hmm.
And the guys I was dealing with, we were ready to go to contract. And I said, you know, and Debbie was going to do it at a great price to them, half what she normally does it. I said, they're going to put you up for a week, and like billionaires, you know, they'll take care of you. And then they changed the date, and they made it around Christmas, and Debbie was booked up. So I lost that gig. But like I said, it was a pretty good thing. I became very friendly with Debbie and a lot of the bands here. And at a certain point, I realized that rock and roll and fashion and culture were all crisscrossing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I said, wow, this is the perfect scene to try to find someone that's a unique designer and find them one of these groups, right? And see if I can put something together. So I used to go and shop the National Fashion Boutique Show every year to buy personal stuff, and because I was doing flea markets before that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I go up and I meet this guy Bruce Coster from Gandalf the Wizard in Royal Oak, Michigan. And he's got these beautiful custom leathers. He was already working with Cameo and with who is that? Magic Dick, Love Stinks. Anyway, he was working with big groups and doing designing leathers for them. I said to him, I said, you've got beautiful stuff. I said, I'm very interested. I said, I'm working in a scene right now that is ready to explode at the seams. It's called punk rock, and some people are calling it new wave. I said, but there's all these bands that are getting signed now, and I have access to them. I said, if I can find you an act that will make your product look stellar, are you in a position to comp them and give them stage gear for their tour? They're getting ready to go to Europe. I said, the girl who fronts the band is beautiful. She's a knock dead, beautiful model. And the band is great, and they have hit material. And he said, well, if you can, yeah. All right. So he gave me a catalog, Gandalf the Wizard, out of Royal Oak, Michigan. And I brought that down. And one of my favorite groups, and someone that I really loved, was this band Blondie. Right. And I went up to Debbie and Chris, and I said, hey, would you guys be interested in getting some super fine custom jackets built for you? I know you guys are going out on a big tour. I said it would be great for you, and it would be great for the guy that's manufacturing. All right. That ended up Coster's stuff ended up becoming the picture on Parallel Lines, on the Parallel Lines album. And it was like, that was the thing. It made it work, you know, and it was like, they were out, they were touring in Europe, they were touring in Amsterdam. I get a call from the manager and he says, Cosmo, he says, the kids were playing in Amsterdam. Someone broke into their dressing room while they were on stage and stole their coats. Can you replace the goods? I called up Bruce in Royal Oak, and he had some credit problems with his leather suppliers. He said, these guys I owe money to will break my knees. If I try to get free stuff right now, he says, I can't do it. And so that was it with that. And then later when I was working on a TV show called Tales from the Dark Side. I got Debbie a show on that. So they've been good friends for years. Most of the people that we worked with in that time became the base of our friendships. And we kept the friendships together for 35, 40 years. You know, where I can still call up people from Talking Heads, or I can call up Chris or Debbie or, you know, different people. We see each other on the street. It's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? You know, that was like the best music scene I've ever been a part of. Now, that's what has something to do with CBGBs, if I can explain a little bit.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'm going to turn it over to Tom. He's got a question for you about the business, the anime.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. I guess the only question I have is maybe talk a little bit more about your time with Tobacco Road and with Iko Iko, because they were kind of a new discovery for me, even though they'd been around forever. For me, I got to see them live at Earl's and really enjoyed their music, and it seems like they have such a rich history. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, Tobacco Road, I ended up going there. I was working at a club called Stella Blue down on the beach. And they ended up closing up. And the fellow that was he was the door guy, and he was very involved in making shows decisions. Now he does a lot of stuff with Live Nation for years. Rob Holland. He said, hey, why don't you go to Tobacco Road? He says, they've got great music there. And he says, go there, go jam or something. Just go and hang out. He said, they might be looking for another engineer. He says, I can throw in a couple good words for you. So I went down there and I started jamming, hung out, did some of the open road jams. And then I met George, who had the sound gig there. He had a sound company and he was getting very busy with his own gigs. And he hired me as a part of the rotating staff. There were about 3 or 4 different engineers that would come in. And about 2 years into it, George got so busy that he said he wanted to, he had to replace himself there. He asked me if I would be interested. I said, yeah. I said, does Pinocchio have a wooden dick? I said, yeah, I am interested. So I ended up taking the gig, and I was there for 15 years as the production manager and sound engineer. And a band that I had worked with many times at Stella Blue, Iko Iko, was like the house band that is synonymous with the name Tobacco Road. And I first of all, I like Graham. Graham is a solid being. He's for real. He reminds me a lot of ways creatively of Dosa, of Keith Lane, who I worked with and have for the last 50 years. He's very esoterically grounded. His lyrics and his stories are very unique. And it reminds me of like Dosa's stuff. Dosa wrote from the spirit, and the spirit contacted him and gave him the material. He had to work, he had to shape it and make it work on this level. But to me, that's what Graham does. He's an incredibly tuned in individual that's really, he's for real. The guy is for real, and his material, he doesn't talk about fantasies. He talks about things that actually happen in his life that he can relate to. And to me, those are the songs and the productions that have the most contact, because they're coming from other beings and they're telling the story of being here on the planet Earth. One of the things I've come to realize is that most of the arts came about through the meetings of very, very intelligent people, probably many thousands of years ago here. Music came through Socrates, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, and
The jungle.
Pythagoras. But they were the ones that defined the sequencing between the notes. All right, originally, when the law of seven came about, there's two very important laws on this planet. There's actually 48 mechanical laws, but two of the most fundamental that affect everything in every situation everywhere are the law of three forces, and the law of octaves. The octaves, music and waves and energy and vibration play a part of everything we know and everything we don't know. And the more you can learn about these two laws and how they affect you and work in you, the further you can move in life. You know, they were brought forward by a guy by the name of George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, who brought with him an incredible school and an incredible school of knowledge. And he's preserved and followed through with a lot of knowledge that has been here on the planet, that came, that lost, that got forgotten, it got stolen, or it just disappeared in the cracks of time. You know, like different civilizations, sands came along, they got buried. Waters came along, they went underground. You know, so there's been many, many things in the history of this planet that we don't know about. And if we can find people that know this stuff, it can increase our personal wealth of knowledge. And I ended up teaching school for 3 years, actually rock and roll college. And I taught lighting, I taught sound, and I taught structure of the industry. And in all of these things, as I was teaching my students the physical laws and the scientific laws, I also said that one of the things that really affects and is there through playing music with people, doing theater with people, is you can wake up. You can actually learn to wake up by playing certain sequences of frequencies. This has been known for thousands of years. You know, I don't know if you guys are into the ancient alien channels and stuff. I happen to be a big fan of that.
Absolutely.
You know, and they reinforce a lot of the theories that I've been studying and being taught. And
That's
it's
great. No, that's awesome, Cosmos. So you have this cosmic connection. Is that where the name Cosmo comes from?
the name. Well, yeah, the name came to me from the spirit. Like all the names that I use, animes came from the spirit. Star Tune was rock and roll cartoons from the galaxies, from the stars. The name was stolen, unfortunately, by a TV company, the amusement park. Evidently, I had some good names because a lot of people have stolen them. But yes, that's where it came from. It came from my, what would you say, spirit, my spirit that I communicate with. Not in a body anymore.
The higher
Beyond that,
self?
higher self, and definitely a permanent being. And it's one of the things I strive to try to become, is a being with permanence, and that's something we can do while we're here. And one of the things I've discovered is you can actually wake up to yourself playing music with people. You can actually, by the right sequencing of vibrations, and Gurdjieff was very hip to that. He worked with a composer by the name of Thomas D. Hartman, who was an orchestral, he could write for orchestra. And he used different sequencing, and using the law of seven, created these prayers that actually work, and they're musical prayers. And I started studying that about 10, 15 years ago. And it's just a whole new knowledge and a whole new understanding of music. As a child, I always knew that music was important. My father was before World War II, was a tune plugger for the big bands, for Ellington, Basie, Tommy Dorsey. He was a keyboard player. And he met my mom. My mom was working for Mills Publishing. And Daddy told me stories about, buying coffee for Frank Sinatra when he couldn't afford a cup himself.
Wow.
That's hard for me to think back.
Right.
You know, chairman of the board's always had money, as far as I know.
Right.
you know, but
So you're based in Miami now. Is that
yeah,
correct?
I'm in North Miami Beach, Aventura. Yeah.
Nice. That's a nice area. So what kind of projects have you got? I think you mentioned before we came on that you have a new album coming out, some new music. Do you want to play any of that?
I'll play you a tune. I'll play you a tune. It's an oldie. It's actually my first record. I had a pick here. Oh, here it is. All right. Yeah, it's called. This was a song 4 and 2 CBGBs called "Rockin' on the Bowery," and it goes something like this. Everybody's rocking on the Bowery, trying to survive. You gotta keep it rocking on the Bowery if you wanna stay alive. Go to work, find a job. Friends are rocking on shaky feet, trying to keep warm. Window watching on Houston Street, the Bowery stars fall. The latest trick or treat on 2nd Avenue, strutting their stuff at night, hooking in the Bowery stew, waiting for a fight. Everybody's rocking on the Bowery, trying to survive. You gotta keep rocking on the Bowery if you wanna stay alive. Go to work. Work it, Davey. New York City rocks your dawn if you pay the dues to play. You can party all night long if you rock the Bowery way. Said everybody's rocking on the Bowery, trying to survive. You gotta keep it rocking on the Bowery if you wanna stay alive. Go to work.
Oh, did we lose him? There you go. He came back. Yeah, guys.
Rocking on the Bowery. Thank
Nice
you.
work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Good work when you can get it, you know?
So how long have you been in the whole business now, Cosmo? You're none of us are young men, but
I started when I was a kid, when I was 14. My father, at that point, had a business with his brother selling a machine called the Echophonic, which was sort of like the Echoplex. It was a different invention. I had a relative that was an inventor, Uncle Samuel, and he invented this thing. And Daddy had a little store down in Normandy Isle selling those machines. And when I was 14, I wasn't playing it, but I went down there to see it, and he was showing this machine, and he had this guy named Del Staton, who was a guitar player, and Del got behind in his payments for his Echo machine, so he ended up giving his guitar to Daddy and Uncle Aaron, and they gave me that, and that was my first guitar. And then at that point, I was 14. It was 1961, and there was there was some great music out that I really really loved. First of all, I loved instrumental surf music, the Ventures, the Safaris, the Aquanauts, all the great instrumental players. And I wanted to start a band, so I ended up finding some guys down here, and we started kind of a surf band. We would play instrumentals, and we would go around. This in the early 60s in Miami, Motel Row. You could go and you could play there. You could throw your stuff on the stage, send a hat around, and people would give you money, room keys, cigars, bras, all sorts of stuff. And it was like, that was my coming into it. And then we started getting gigs, playing weddings and, bar mitzvahs and quilting bees, whatever, anything that they had money and that we could make a few bucks and play our music. And then along with the surf thing, I loved the Beach Boys and I loved their harmonies. And I kind of brought that to the Bajas, which became the Gents 5, and we became a Beach Boys tribute band, I guess you'd call it. But we played all the harmony stuff, like Four Seasons, Beach Boys, Hollies, anything that had Beatles, some Stones, more Beatles oriented though. And that was my beginnings kind of getting into the business and of learning to play.
Those headphones are outright attacking you, I think, Cosmo.
Yeah, they are.
I think you're under siege from the headphones. I think you got the wrong one in the wrong ear, I think is what's happening. That's why they're not fitting right.
It could be.
It's that simple.
Hold
Those
on,
Apple headphones, I'm telling you, they're weird. You get them in the wrong ears, they don't fit right. Now you're happy, right?
Now I'm happy. Yeah. Someone that knows the technology.
I was watching you be devoured, like they were like tentacles. They were taking you over.
The attack of the earphones.
I'm telling you, this technology is really getting to all of us. It's so good to hear somebody talking about. I mean, you're just a font of stories. I wish you knew how to tell a story. I mean, I'm just kidding, because you are rich with story. I mean, just let him go. Just put a quarter in. Just let him go. I mean, the richness, because that's the thing, is you're handing down, I think, a little bit of a memoir here with what you're talking about. So it's great.
Well, I tell you, I am interested in the idea of writing a book, and have actually started with a few chapters. But I think what I experienced could be help to a lot of other people that have the same dream. I mean, it's same but it's different. The way it manifests now is completely different. But I like to help people as well as as strike out for myself. One of the acts I'm working with is actually a generational thing. About 2.5 years ago, my mentor, Taxi, called me up and says, "Hey, Cos," he says, "you remember the shirts?" I said, "Of course I remember the shirts." He says, "Well, Johnny and Johnny, Zeke, and Fran are moving down to Miami. They're moving down to Florida, blah, blah, blah. They have a daughter that's a singer. I want you to give a listen to her and see if you can do anything with her." And I listened to the material. And then, I talked to John. John, was behind her 100%. And I said, "What kind of material do you do? What kind of music do you do?" EDM. I said, "EDM, is that like erectile dysfunction music?" No, it's electronic dance music. I said, "Oh, okay. All right. So let me hear it." Anyway, they come down, and I had lunch with Chris and Sue. And first of all, Sue is not dead gorgeous. She's got a voice that's it's incredible. It's somewhere between Madonna and
where was this at the time?
This was down here when they moved down here. And I listened to him and I said, "Wow," I said, "I really like this music. It's very different. I don't know the scene, I got to tell you." I said, "But I've loved electronic music since the 60s. Mm-hmm. When I lived in Hawaii, one of our best friends ran the electronic music lab at the University of Hawaii and became a very good friend that we did collaborations with. And he was out there. He had the art dealership for the island, and he had the old synthesizers like the Buklas, back when you had to patch things and know how the electronics worked. It wasn't just pushing a button. I mean, now today, all you got to do, you walk in any music store, I want something, goes, no problem. Push this button, push that button, and really got into electronic music. And we took them on as a management thing. We manage them now. They're called Knock. And this girl is she's going to be big. She's got a voice that the big electronic labels love it. Her first major release came out last March with Armin van Buuren, who's one of the big fathers of electronic dance music.
Absolutely. What do you think it takes for somebody to punch through in the industry nowadays? What does it really take for them to really make it?
Well, number one, you've got to have good material. You've got to be good live. And you've got to be good with marketing. You got to be good with T-shirts, baseball caps, selling your product. Most product does not come out in a physical product anymore. So it's all up in the air. So when, downloads are you're getting a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny with any downloads. I have a guy I manage that's got 92 albums out. He is making money with them all over the world, but he'll call me up, says, Cos, I had a great weekend. I just saw 21,000 downloads. I said, can you convert that into metrics that I can understand? Like, what does that mean in terms of where the dollars are and where the decimal point is? I said, what's that mean money-wise? He said, I've got $28 for it. I said, so you sold 21,000 downloads and you can buy yourself maybe 2 big pizzas from Papa John's. I said, welcome to the music industry in 2020. So everything's different. So you've got to, what this time is bringing us is we have the ability to put out all the stuff. One person can do it all. But there's a lot of stuff involved in doing it all. You need someone that can do promotion, that knows how to do airplay, that knows how to buy 13-week programs, that knows how to make swag, and that knows how to advertise it, get it online, sell it, turn it into dollars.
All of which comes at a price, though, as well.
Everything in life comes at a price.
Absolutely.
So, you've got to make a commitment to yourself that I am going to do everything that I can for me to move me forward. It used to be that you did everything so you could impress the business out there when business really meant something. All right. Now, you can make as good a record as a major can make. The technology's there and you can have it in your own living room for less than $10,000, probably less than $2,000. Couple of good mics and like a 24 channel console that can record to each thing. I think more than 24 tracks, really more than 16 tracks, you don't have a song.
I think that's the amazing part about technology now is that it's giving us all amazing leverage. I mean, even live streaming like this, we've literally just declared ourselves to be network executives with multi-point feed. Okay, and here we are. So I think it's amazing how we can all leverage this technology. I mean, it's just utterly, we're living in golden times right now. In spite of all the other stuff that's happening, technology-wise, we've got a lot of leverage from the small guy can really leverage up with this technology, don't you think?
I think, and I know, I was working with a girl, Diane Mink, who's really an incredible proponent of this. She's an incredible writer, incredible producer. She's a graphic artist. She builds buildings. I mean, she's got knowledge that's just like, she's beyond me, way, way, way beyond me. But she's really, really smart. And she, everything she's learned, she's gotten really, really good at. She builds big buildings She designs them, architects them, hires all the people, sees them through from breaking ground to a finished building ready to open. And she applies the same thing to her music. For a while, I had her. I got her a gig doing the artwork for the people that bought the Jimi Hendrix estate. Uh, when I was going through my mom's estate when she passed, I met this fellow Bliss, and Bliss had bought all of Jimmy's doodles and all of his artwork. I got Diane's stuff and Bliss's stuff at the at Ray's gallery for one of the Art Basels, and it was incredible. But what I'm saying is that we have to become executives for our own material and our own word and our own understanding of the world, and put it out in a way that's truthful and that can help yourself and help other people.
Hey, Cosmo.
Yeah.
Small technicality. If you got a light you can turn on, I think your camera's starting to kind of go. We're going dark, Captain.
Yeah.
God said the word, and the word was good.
All
Yay!
right.
Oh, much better. He's
Better.
back. You were starting to look like an impressionist painting. It was amazing. When you watch the video, it's going to look like...
I was going, is he?
It's kind of liking it. It was actually kind of cool. It was almost like an Andy Warhol moment there. So,
Right.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Andy's one of the people I got to meet at CBGB's. He was just sit right below my lighting stand. And I actually did a commercial with him for TDK videotapes when we had
Wow.
Talking Dog. Again, another incredible soul. Every now and then there's incredible souls that come to this planet to teach us new things. And we've got to be open to that and look for people, I think, that are a whole lot smarter than us.
Well, we got to stop killing them.
Right.
Well,
We've killed every divine individual that's ever come to this planet. We wind up killing them or something.
Or stealing like Tesla, stealing all their material.
The suppression, all of it. Yeah.
It's that's like I said, that's why I really get into the ancient alien stuff, because they're teaching stuff that was valid here and still is valid here.
We're on the same page with that myself. Absolutely. You notice the hat.
Get together for the show.
They're still here.
Oh, absolutely.
They're still here. How do you think they lifted 100-ton stones? Not with 1,000 people pulling a wheelbarrow across the sands.
Yeah.
Maybe vibrations, maybe knowing the right frequencies to pair that lifts things and moves them.
It's amazing. It's amazing when you bring this topic up. I remember a few years ago, let's say 10 years ago, you bring it up, and people might go, they want to change the subject.
Eyes roll in the back of their head.
Now,
I got to leave.
You are preaching to the choir. Now this is old information that everybody is like, yes, we know this guy, because I'm this guy. This is one of the most popular topics on the internet, is this whole concept.
You know who I've really come to embrace? David Wilcock. Do you know who he is?
Absolutely. I like David. David's an awesome presenter, but the whole issue that I have with David is the whole Corey Goode narrative. I think that he was leading the witness, and I don't know if that whole project has the legitimacy that it needs because it doesn't have any evidence. That's my biggest problem with David.
His thing on COVID?
No, I haven't even seen that. I haven't even paid attention. The David has been spinning a yarn about an alliance and about these saviors that are coming to save us that we can't see. Nothing that David talks about can be seen or has evidence. That's the only thing I don't like. Other than that, I love his stories and the Corey stories. I love them. I wish that they were true. I want them to be true. But
I've been a big fan of Edgar Casey for years.
Well, he thinks he's the reincarnated version of. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. David, I think, gets a swell head. He's a very bright individual. I'll never disparage his smarts, but I question the evidence. He does a really great talk on cosmic alignment of pyramidal structures across the galactic plane. I'm like, wow, this is great stuff. It even has science behind it. But when he gets into the Corey stories, where I think he was, like I said, leading the witness, I don't know how much of that was made up. Like I said, I'd love it to be true, but I just question his motives. And I think he also had a major falling out with Gaia and Gaia TV.
Ah, okay. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, there was a major falling out. That's why you haven't really, I don't think you've heard a lot from Corey or David about the whole topic, the whole secret space program.
Right, right, right.
But I followed all that quite closely. Binge watched all of it.
You know, I
Uh,
love it. I love watching ancient aliens. I like out there stuff.
Well, it's quite plausible. This is the thing. Even though I may not totally buy, I can't give it a complete seal of approval, which who am I anyway? But my own personal feeling is I can't. There's just something that says to me, he talks about the blue avians. Can you at
Yeah,
least give us a tail feather?
right,
Okay.
right.
Okay. Something. We need
But
something.
physical. This is the thing I like is when people, the stuff I'm studying, they say study it and at least give us the chance that it might be right. You will eventually be able to prove this to yourself because it's a path of self illumination,
Right.
and it's through meditation, dance, music, prayer, of trying to connect our three brains. We're three brain beings. We got a brain up in our kepi that thinks. We got a brain here in the middle of our chest on the left side that beats, that likes, it hates. It's the emotional center. And then right where the rib cage meets, there's a big knot there that protects the solar plexus, which is a major meeting of ganglia. So there's three different brains. They all operate at different frequencies. By harmonizing the brains, we can create the supercomputer on ourselves and we can create the higher state. It's possible. We were endowed with all this technology. We just have to learn how to fly this damn thing.
I think that's the thing. That people talk about transhumanism. They want to move to these mechanical bodies when I think that they don't realize fully what the human body is quite capable of. The human mind, consciousness, all of it is capable. I think that we've been equipped. We just don't know how to operate, like you said, operate the machinery.
Well, and what we have to do is we have to transcend being mechanical beings because so many things, due to the way that the law of seven operates, uh, until we become conscious to ourselves, we're subject to sleepwalking and walking through life thinking we know. I think most of the people that are in Washington are sleepwalking robots. They're so enamored with the power and what they can do with that on a personal level that they forgot they're there as servants to, yeah, take some for yourself, but serve the people you're there to serve. Make the people of America free, and that we have the ability to do it, and allow us to do that, and allow us to live individual lives. Right now, this is all changing. It's all being pulled away from us.
I think there's a lot of upsides to this whole pause that we're on right now, even though there's a lot of downsides. But there are some interesting outcomes that are occurring. Nature is kind of finding its way back. People are at home, they're spending time with families maybe they didn't have time to do before. There's a lot of positive outcomes through this that I think people are finding out that it's not all about the money.
It's about developing as a fully orchestrated human being and becoming a more human being. We can go all the way up to level 9. We can go 4 means you're starting to wake up. 4, 5, 6 are awoken man. 7, 8, 9 are angels, archangels, and quarter maintainers. Again, there's sequencing and there's ordering to the universe. It's not all chaotic ambient motion. There's a lot of order to it, but we have to create a higher self in our own planes to be able to see that.
Maybe people want to know, how does this affect your music and your work in the music business? How does that affect you?
Affects everything because what I learn through my spiritualism, I try to apply to my music, and I try to put these concepts of being able to wake up, for example, playing with a group of people and playing with them with the idea and the intention of waking up together as a group. I mean, it's like back in the old days, we used to do it by dropping a pill back in the 60s. I ran, it's funny, I was working at a club called the World in New York. This was in late 80s. And I'm walking there. It's a dicey area in New York. It was between A and B and First Street. Real funky down there. I'm walking over the club, and I ran into one of the kids I knew from another club, and they said, "Hey, did you hear about this new stuff? It's got this psychedelic stuff going around. It's called acid." I said, "Really? Tell me some more. What does this do for one? Does it show you? Does it open new worlds to you? What does it do?" And they're trying to tell me about it. I learned these things in the 60s. So, but now it seems like I find lots of people, just like you were saying, like the esoteric ideas now are becoming, it's their time for stage to be on the main stage, not in a dark room whispering about, "Did you hear this story? Joanne was at a party and the spirit appeared in a tree." That actually happened to me at my sitar teacher's house.
People are a bit more willing to talk about these esoteric experiences because a lot of people are having experiences, and now I think we're entering an era where it's safer people feel safer to talk about it.
You're absolutely right. When I used to talk about this stuff at CBGBs to people, they said, "Man, you're not that far from Bellevue. We can give you a ride down there." You probably won't even have to show them an identity bracelet. Just talk some of your talk. So I realized back then I can't talk openly with everybody about what I know or what I've seen. That you have to pick your battles carefully. And I found people that are a lot further out than me that are like, my eyes roll back in my head.
And some of them get Oscars and Grammys. So
and they're writing incredible films.
Absolutely. So
Spielberg's a major talent on this planet. I don't know, and I can't tell you this knowing certainly, but I sure have a strong suspicion that he's being downloaded from higher entities. And he's got materials that we need. There's an interrelationship between all these different stratas of worlds. And there are things that make the beings in each one of those stratas be able to communicate with each other and create things like breath, things like a heartbeat, things like love, things like hate, all these different emotions that we feel. They're all part of our makeup. And the only way we become full orchestrated human beings is by going through all these things. If we want to be gods, we got to go through the whole process. I mean, think about it. Before we were born, we went through lots of different lifetimes in our mom's stomach, unless you were a test tube baby. But I remember reading Siddhartha and actually going into some of these states that the Buddha went into. When I'm reading it, and I'm saying, "Wow, this is these are." When I first read the first book I read in the work was something called Theory of Celestial Influence by a guy named Rodney Collin. He was a student of Gurdjieff's. And when I read that book, this old hippie used to play with the Amboy Dukes, gave me this book when I was in Hawaii. And I started reading it, and it was, wow, it's like someone split my head open with a pickaxe, and information just started to come in. All these different tables of periodic elements, how they're all connected to each other through vibration and through frequency, and how as you move from the left to the right, you go from elements that are changing into the inner elements. And as you start to understand some of these things, you can start to, at least I could, in my mind, start to understand something about string theory, atomic theory, and then understand that these were all, each element was a universe unto itself, but they all work together in a harmony, and they can go from one element to another by adding or taking away an electron or a group of electrons. And in a way, if you think about electronic and molecular life, maybe they're very, very similar to the solar systems.
It's all scalable.
It's scalable, right, right. And if we understand the mathematics, now we have the mathematics that can show us about, tube theory and traveling through time tunnels. We didn't have the mathematics before. That was only in the Teslas and the Einsteins and the super, super geniuses. But now that those theories have become somewhat, well, more commonplace, whether people understand them, that's another story.
Well, there's a rediscovery of all these things. So,
well,
Sam? Go ahead.
These were things that were forgotten, stolen, or just disappeared in time. And they're part of our history and part of our dowry, if you work, if you think about it.
Absolutely. Sam?
Yeah, I wanted Kaz to tell us how animes actually got started.
How did it get started? Okay. When I got to New York, was with Theater of Madness, and that was Sanity Productions. What's your cup of tea? Sanity or insanity? And when that broke up, I had to come up with a new name. And Dosa, Dotha Keith Lane, gave me the name Animes and said, "This is from Tom. This is from the spirit." Now, he gave me another name, and I was a fool not to jump with it. Audible Music was supposed to be my publishing company. And I had actually started it, and I didn't have the money to keep it up when I was in New York. Because it was, if you're a writer, they don't charge you. If you're a publisher, ASCAP and BNMI charge you. And at that point, I wasn't able to make the second year's payment. The way I was able to get Dosa a deal is I got him recognition on with ASCAP. He got a $200 award, and he's been doing a lot of work with them since then. But that's the way. And the whole idea was Startoon was to be rock and roll cartoons from the stars, and Animes was the force, like the amazing world of animation. And I did have in mind to do animated cartoons. I have studied it. I also studied a lot about filmmaking and animation, stuff like that. I probably lived about, 12 lifetimes down here so far of different things. But, I want to learn things. And, if I can't find the right person to do it, that's not going to stop me from doing it.
No.
Well, we're getting pretty close here, guys, to towards the end of the road here.
Okay.
Is there anything that you wanted to, like any websites or any points of contact people can get a hold of you or anything like that?
Well, number one, you can get a hold of Knock at www.knockmusic.com, and that's spelled NOHC, like nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen. All right.
First together, though. Wow.
Their stuff is out there right now. I just heard from Bobby that something new is happening with Armin's label, and Sue's getting ready to come out with a solo album. And
so these folks are in Miami. Is that they're in the Miami area, or where are they at?
No, they live in California, San Diego area. San Diego or Long Beach, California.
Okay.
They're part of the community there. Chris, who does most of the orchestrations and the keying, the music bass, also is a techie, so he does a lot of stuff, big rock and roll productions. And Susan is a singer, a writer, a producer, and a visual artist as well.
And so on this, with them, are you actually performing, or are you producing?
No. No, I manage. I manage along with a fellow named Bobby Abbott, who
Ah,
We
okay.
need
Sammy
to get
knows.
them one here.
Huh?
You know,
Yeah, he would
we
be a
need to
good
get
one.
them one
Yeah.
here.
Yes. Uh, and then I have an artist, Tad Sharp, who is a multi-genre, sort of a world artist. His whole house is a recording studio, and I think he's released 2 or 3 albums in the last couple of months. He's got 92 products out there worldwide, all sorts of different genres. Uh, he's a real good example of what the artists of today need to do. First of all, they need to have their own facility that they can. 3 o'clock in the morning, you want to make a tune that's coming through you, run it, and tape it. You know, he's always coming up with new, interesting stuff. I have another artist by the name of Michael Guardian, who's in the Pennsylvania area, who's very, very esoteric music. Again, he writes world music. Uh, great composer. Really, really, he's great for film soundtracks and stuff like that. And I have basically a boutique agency, and I'm working with Sammy to help him promote any of the acts that we can, and build them up, build a good strong base.
Yeah, we were opening up new places, and this happened. We were getting ready to really get some stuff together with some casinos and everything, but then this happened. But we'll be there again.
Listen, I know what I know. Sammy knows what he knows. It's not like someone's going to take my knowledge and I can't do it anymore. I've worked in this thing for 50, 56, 7 years, and what I know it in my heart. I've lived it,
Yeah.
that's to me is the way you do the rock and roll business. One of the things I was taught very young in the industry is that you got to pay your dues, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the new technologies surpass a lot of that, but not all of it. You still got to be people. Radio programmers got to like you.
You still got to be good.
You got to be good at what you do, and you got to be real, and you got to be a source of wisdom that people can. Look at someone like Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, he's been writing incredible stuff since he first came out. It gets better and better and better every year. David Bowie, Pink Floyd, Gilmore, Stevie Ray, all these people, Jimi Hendrix. They made incredible music while they were here, and they left it, and it still lives on.
It's
It's a
amazing.
testament to it.
It's amazing that music, that era, has been so enduring and such a high bar compared to what we have now.
He's the best I've ever seen and have borne personal witness to. And I got to see him most of the times he played in Hawaii. Nearly got to open for him.
Well, we're gonna have to do a part two because
Yeah.
we're out of time. But there's definitely gonna have to be another part two. You gotta have to put together some kind of memoir, Cosmo, because the stories you have are so rich that this lifetime of music and everything else you've been doing is gonna be amazing. So Sam, I guess if we got nothing else, I guess we'll say goodnight for the time being.
Thank you, Cos. Love you, brother.
Let me say thank you to Sam and thank you, Tom. This has been a most enjoyable hour and a half.
Thank you. It's been amazing for me. I just sit here with my jaw going, okay, wow. Just the history, the oral history. This is how the tribe needs to function. We need this oral history. So I
That's
love
why
it.
rap came about originally, telling
Yeah,
the history
that's it.
in
Okay, guys.
Africa.
All right.
Pleasure.
I will see you guys.
Take care.
Hang on. Don't hang up right away, Cosmo. We're going to talk for a minute after we say goodnight to the folks.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. And if you're listening to this now, Sam's got his website at naughtyrock.com. It's NAUTIROCK.com. And so Sam's going to start doing some more of these shows, and definitely Cosmo's going to be back. So that's going to happen again because I'm sure you're just getting started, Cosmo. So until next time, we will see you all on the net.